Hey guys, this week we are working on a Camouflage Call of Duty cake. I'm starting with 3 6-inch round cakes and I'm trimming off the outer edge. Once that's done, cut them in half with a leveller. Lay all your layers out flat and coat them with sugar syrup. This is equal parts sugar and water boiled together and then left to cool, which I've then put in a large sprinkle bottle to distribute it. I'll leave it linked below. This will just keep your cake moist whilst we are working on it. I'm sticking down a 6-inch cake card to the centre of a drum with white chocolate ganache. Usually I would use a 6-inch drum for a 6-inch cake, but I'm testing out a thinner cake card. This is the UK version of a cake card, not the corrugated US type. These ones are a bit tougher. Then I'm sticking down my first layer of cake with white chocolate ganache before layering all the cake layers up with fillings of your choice. Take your scraper and butt it up against the cake card. Trim off any bits of cake that touch the scraper. You want a little gap so that you can fill it with the ganache for a smooth finish. Coat the whole thing in a rough layer of white ganache. I have a tutorial on how to make the ganache and also the vanilla cake, which I'll leave linked below. This layer doesn't have to be pretty. We're just locking in all the crumbs, all the fillings and making it a bit sturdier. I'm using my Pro Froster butted up against the cake card to take off any ganache that sticks out. Allow this to firm up a little and then add a final layer of white ganache. This one we can smooth out a bit to get the straight sides and the sharp top. I've put some white ganache into 3 separate bowls and I'm colouring one with green rainbow dust gel. As prissy as it is, it's a bit too bright for what I'm going for, so we'll darken it up later. This next one I'm using sugar flare gel in spruce green. This is my least favourite to use in ganache as it's a little clumpier so it doesn't fully combine and it'll leave small streaks of colour left behind. I just want to show you the different ways of colouring. You can keep adding more until you get the colour you like. I'm adding in a little of the dark gel to the lime green to tone it down a bit. For the third bowl I'm using brown airbrush colour, so now you can see you can colour ganache all different ways. I experiment by mixing various colours together, so I'm adding green fractal airbrush to the one that was already coloured with gels to make my own shade. With a knife, start blobbing on one type of green around the cake in various shapes. Then go in with your darker green, and finally the third colour. I decided to lighten my brown up a little bit with white gel. Once it's all on, gently remove any areas that might be a bit too ganache heavy. Just flatten it down a little bit. Leave it to set at room temperature. Now you want to grab a scraper. I'm using a long metal one as the metal retains the heat longer, but you can still use a plastic one. Dip your scraper into boiling hot water or run it under a very hot tap to heat it up for a few seconds. Wipe any water off and then gently start to scrape the sides. The heat from your scraper will gently melt and soften the ganache, creating a smoother surface and merging the colours. Keep going around to smooth the sides and also scrape the tops flat. See those dark streaks in the green? That is the sugar flare gel, not fully incorporating due to its lumpier texture. It doesn't matter too much for the grungy camouflage we're going for, but if you want a smoother colour, stick with the squirty gels or airbrush colours. Now moving on to the bullets. Roll a thin white sausage of paste and cut it down to a more manageable size. Take a straight edge, I'm using an acetate smoother, and gently roll one end to leave an impression, adding a little pressure to thin it out. You should have a step in the paste like this. Then, about 1 centimetre along, score in another line, and then use this line as a guide to add in another step with your straight edge. Trim off the remaining paste and squeeze the end together into a point. This is the tip of your bullet. It looks a bit like a mini lipstick but pointy. Trim your bullet to size from the other end and then score in another step with your Dresden tool. Make lots of these and then put them to one side to dry on a foam mat. Trace the name onto some greaseproof paper with a pencil. I just hold this up to my computer screen and draw around the letters. Then roll some white paste quite thin with Tylo powder added and score around the letters with a Dresden tool to leave an impression. Take your scalpel and cut out each individual letter using the scored lines as a guide. Roll out some black paste long enough to contain the name and stick the white letters to it with water. Once they are all on, cut a rectangle around the letters. You can use a scalpel or a nice straight edge. Leave that aside to dry and cover your board using the toilet seat method. I use this on pretty much every cake and the full tutorial is always linked below. Using Faye's Regency Gold, I pop it into a bowl with some lemon extract to create a paint. Cover your bullets in this and allow them to dry out. Once your name is firm enough to handle, stick it across the front with water. For the drips, I'm using dark chocolate ganache, which is 1 part double cream and 1 part dark chocolate. I've placed it into a squeezy bottle to control the drips. A long squeeze will create a long drip, and a shorter one will create a shorter drip. I got annoyed with the cap, so I ended up cutting it off. Once you've gone around the whole cake, place the remaining ganache on the top and spread it around with a knife. Whilst the ganache was still wet, I added little tiny black sprinkle skulls and gold confetti to complement the gold bullets. Insert the acrylic cake topper down into the centre. I'll leave links below for this too. I always have a collection of toppers on hand for cakes like this. Then arrange your bullets on the cake as you like. They will stick straight into the ganache, or the ones on the board are just stuck with water. And we're done. I then added some black sugar crystals as I thought they looked pretty cool like shrapnel, and added a bit of extra texture. This design for Matthew was based on him being ex-forces, loving Call of Duty, and it's also got a poppy which is used in his business logo. I'm loving playing around with the white ganache, colouring it for different effects. I prefer it over buttercream as it sets a little bit firmer, especially for those longer car journeys. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a comment as I do always try to read them, and I'll see you again next Tuesday for another tutorial. Bye guys.